Welcome back to another edition of Abnormality. Big Tony.
Can't.
We spent a little time talking about tonight's episode, and we thought that we would maybe spend a little time talking about our past and the history, and maybe a little bit of kind of why we do what we do and why our interests lie in this field. So I'll go ahead and start. I think for me, I've mentioned it. I believe in season 1 we had a little bit of a conversation around my brother. Mm-hmm. And when I was very young, I lost my brother to cancer when he was very young. And I was kind of like the man of the house and kind of helped take care of him. So I was, it was more than just kind of a brother thing. It was a big attachment. Mm-hmm. And so he was taken from me before he turned 5 years old. And from that point on, any time in my life that, things became difficult and things were tough and I was having a hard time continuing with things, I always felt like he was kind of around. And I know that, we've talked in some of our interviews and stuff that we've done with some of the other crews. That's one of the big things they talk about is that whole grief and loss thing that people want so bad to, connect with those people that they've lost that were taken too soon. And so, I've kind of wondered as I've come into adulthood, if maybe part of it isn't just my desire to reconnect with somebody that was taken too soon, but it's like, certain things would happen and certain things would go on at the house, like the house that we lived in. When he passed, certain things that he would do when he was there, because even though he was still pretty small because of the cancer,
right?
There were certain things that he would do and certain noises he would make. And I was, probably 13 at the time, 12 and a half, 13 when he passed away. I would hear those same things.
Weird.
And so, and even at 12 and a half years, 13 years old, it was always, is it just me kind of hearing things? I think that, in the beginning, I wanted so much to not believe that he had passed away that, I wanted to believe more than anything he was still there.
Right.
And kind of to feel that. But, certain things would happen that, were things that only he would do or things that he would know about. And I kind of felt that way. So in essence, I'm not a real religious guy, but growing up through adulthood and through, teenage years into adulthood and so on, I've had a pretty tough, rough go of it at times. And I've always kind of felt like he was my guardian angel. And so, being in the house, and even to this day that, I haven't lived in a house where he was at for years, those same kind of things, I can feel that presence and that thing. And I don't know if it's necessarily because things are tough for me and I need that connection, or if it's just when I feel that way, it's kind of remembering kind of the thought process I was going through and the hard times I was having that maybe bring it up, kind of a deja vu kind of thing. I'm not really sure, but I attribute it to, and it could even just be me feeling the need to have strength because of things going bad, and that's kind of my shoulder to cry on, so to speak. Yeah. So and then like the story I told in season 1, we mentioned the twins a little bit, my youngest daughters, and I'll retell the story again because I think it's fascinating that just kind of I had forgotten for a long time about him. And it was just kind of like, so many years go by and you get busy with life and you don't think about things, and things will happen that kind of remind you of what's going on. And so the story is that Zoe and Chloe were staying at their grandma's house, and Zoe woke up the next morning and retold a story to her grandma that during the night she was having a hard time sleeping because a little boy with glasses was continually waking her up and tickling her feet and talking to her and communicating with her, and that's why she was tired. And so it was her mom's mother. So of course she didn't know the whole story of my brother and all of that. And my brother wore glasses because he was mostly blind. And so she describes a little boy with with glasses and dark hair. And from that day forward, as we all know that have seen the twins, she won't call Chloe anything but Eddie. And so it just kind of brought all that back to me again. And the funny thing is that within months after that story, and she was pretty young at the time, probably 4, has no recollection of it at all. She doesn't remember that part. She doesn't remember any of that. But yet she still to this day, it's Eddie. And
that's interesting.
And nobody else can call her that. If anybody else calls her Eddie, Chloe's like, my name's Chloe. Because I'll catch myself sometimes, I hang out with the girls and I'll catch myself sometimes saying, hey, Eddie, come here. And she kind of looks at me like, Dad, I'm Chloe. And so, but Zoe is allowed to. And the weird thing about it is when she's in a school setting or there's a bunch of other kids around, it's Chloe. But in a personal, like when it's just family or they're at home at their mom's or home at my house, it's Eddie every time. And to me, it's just, it kind of it's kind of an emotional thing in a way, because it kind of makes me remember that all of those times thinking about growing up where I felt like he was there giving strength, because it was just us in the house with mom. And, we were kind of, even at a young age, we were kind of a support system for each other. And it kind of makes me think about that. And so, because of things like that and those experiences with my brother, and, now that the grieving process, obviously, from 30 years ago is over, so that's not an issue anymore. It's just that fascination with, what if? I mean, is it that far-fetched that, all of these energies and things that make us who we are as people don't continue at some point? Because obviously the biological part of it isn't there anymore.
Right.
And so, and even as far as, I haven't been out to the gravesite a lot. It's here in Salem. I haven't been out there a lot, but even when I'm there, that energy feels the same.
Yeah.
That he's kind of around. And it would be fascinating, given how my life has changed in the last couple of years into getting into the paranormal investigation of, I've thought about maybe could we do a few sessions to see if we could reconnect with him.
Yeah.
But yet part of me says, I like what he gives me now. And would it be a disappointment if we didn't catch anything? Would it be my brain telling me, oh, it's got to be him, and convincing myself?
Well, I feel that would happen. Your brain would automatically assume. It's kind of like what the last time we were in studio, what Jay was saying is you bring in your mindset automatically. It's your brother. You're automatically going to assume whoever talks, it's got to be him.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Here's the interesting thing about your twins and some things from a friend of mine from the past. My cousin's best friend actually killed himself.
Okay.
But when in his suicide note to his neighbor, he wrote a suicide note to his parents and to his neighbor who he had an infatuation with her daughter. And he said, when I die, I'm going to be reincarnated as one of your children. 1 month after he died and killed himself, she was pregnant with twins.
Yeah.
And she was like,
Which is trippy, because I did the interview for William's show when we were over at the Seaside Ghost Conference, and the psychic that I interviewed that night said, before I even gave her a complete history of everything or even said anything, just kind of a little tidbit, she said, well, your brother was recreated in your twins. Was I don't know, she didn't really specify. She said he is your twins.
Yeah.
And I thought, how fascinating is that maybe that's the way it was supposed to be, that he was going to come back in one of my children, but oops, there was two of them, and so a part of him is in each.
Yeah, and maybe that's why Zoe is calling her Eddie, because that's who she sees.
Yeah, she got to feel the experience and got to meet and talk and saw him in her dreams or however it happened, and then Chloe is the other part of it.
And realistically, you don't know. I mean, before your twins were created, Eddie was already gone. They could have met up in that other world and said, hey, this is what's going to happen, you know.
Because, I mean, the twins are just, some of my best friends in the whole world. Yeah. I mean, we have so much fun, and we have a connection that, I have 5 children, but I mean, the connection that I feel with the twins has always been a little bit different.
Yeah.
Which makes perfect sense, because, even growing up, and Eddie was so small, he was like my best friend, because, he needed a lot of care, and I had to keep an eye on him, so I didn't really have a childhood during those years, because Mom worked and everything was kind of about him.
Well, and you are big, brother.
Yeah, I got the big brother part. I got so excited my mic came off. But yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I think that's what, when I had the opportunity, when I met Chris, and he said, we do ghost hunting, and I thought it just kind of all clicked, like, that makes sense. And whenever I would see a movie, and I know there's a lot of stereotypical movies out there that poke fun at it and make jokes about it. And so it's a little bit tough to take it seriously when you're looking at some of those things, because we've talked about the whoopee and the ghost, and it's kind of that stereotypical funny, which I think is what made the movie what it was, because they were trying to poke fun at it. So it makes it hard for me to take it seriously and talk about it with other people, because they're like, oh, and it goes back to missed his brother, and he really wants to reconnect, and he's going to hear things, see things, do things that, make him think that he's convinced that he's there. But as far as I'm concerned, and it's kind of a weird transition, because being that I feel like he's kind of my guardian angel, in essence, it's like, I don't know how to explain this, like an older spirit or an older entity that's watching over me. So it's like, what was he before? You know, it's like even though I was, 7.5 years older, it felt like he was the one that was giving me what I needed and was kind of, in essence, watching over me and caring for me. So it's like, it's weird how that transition goes.
And maybe now with you, what he's doing is, when you're having that hard time in your life, he's pushing you or pointing you in the direction you need to go and saying, go this way.
Well, and I wonder too, because, if, depending on your belief system, if he's sitting back watching, I've had some tough times growing up and some things I went through, that's his way of kind of, I'm going to take over as big brother and kind of direct, and he needs strength, and he needs, because I've even told people before that I feel like the only reason I'm, kind of where I'm at now as I am today, coming through what I've come through, is because the strength of Eddie, and just always feeling like he's always there with me. And so it's just kind of driven me when, Chris started talking to me about, let's do some ghost hunting. Even though that's not something I'm willing to explore or go into, but the other part of it of, dealing with people's loss and dealing with things that aren't, with us anymore, at least in the physical presence.
Yeah, and I honestly would say, kind of touch on what you said earlier, 90% of what hauntings are out there now is humans' inability to let go.
Yeah.
They want that chance to make sure that grandma's okay, that your brother's okay,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's almost like, you see it as a connection with people of times that you remember that were great. Mm-hmm. That people that you really connected with and you had great times with, because, there's been some people that I've connected with in my life that haven't thought once about where they're at and where they're buried or what's going on. But it's like those people that you connected with in your younger years that were, that you could, kind of make that push towards, I think they're still here. I still think they're watching over me. So it's hard to tell. I mean, and that's part of the problem, this is kind of a pseudo-scientific field. It's not like you can say, ghost hunting and paranormal experiences are a scientific field. It's proven. We have fact. This is all people's, it's a belief system.
Yeah.
It's, gut feelings and feeling energies and things like that. So.
And I mean, realistically, you're never really going to know that it's.
Real quick, did you catch the big word, pseudo-scientific?
I did.
I practiced that a little bit.
It confused me for a minute.
That word came out and it just didn't feel right because there wasn't a small word attached to it, like the or it. It was good. I apologize. Go ahead. I just was impressed with myself for a second.
But realistically, with Eddie, you're not really going to ever know it's him unless he comes right out and says, "Tony, it's me."
Yeah.
Then you're going to be like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." But
and I wish. I mean,
But if he's that guardian, he's not going to let you know that he's actually the one that's. Like going back to your basketball thing, maybe that was the wrong time of your life to go all the way over there. Mm-hmm. So he turned you this way and said, okay, no, you're going to be a dad now.
Yeah.
Maybe that's...
maybe.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and I believe that. So, I've given a little bit of history, kind of, what's made me tick over the years and what's fascinating to me. So, we've talked a little bit about, your past and some of the things that were important to you, but what do you think is that one thing that kind of happened that drove you towards the fascination with the paranormal world, the pseudo-scientific world of paranormal investigation? That was pretty awesome.
That was good.
That was good.
We need to have a PhD.
It'll never happen again. I used the big words. I even put them in a big sentence.
We need to have a PhD by your name.
I put it in a sentence so people would know that I just wasn't throwing it out there. I actually know what it means.
So what happened with me is, on season 1 we talked about it. At the age of 8, I had my first experience.
Okay.
I was at my great aunt's house, which is a century-old farm, and I woke up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, and there was a woman in a black flowing dress standing over the top of me, kind of just stroking my hair, saying everything's going to be okay. So
you actually felt the communication?
Yep.
Okay.
And I wasn't freaked out at all by any means, which is weird.
Well, was it something that you could physically see and tell who it was, or was it just a feeling that you got that maybe mimicked kind of how you felt about Grandma? No,
I saw her. I saw her facial features. I saw everything about her.
So you could actually see who it was. And it wasn't just a feeling.
And with her, the motion of her, going over my hair, it was a warming, comforting feeling, which was, weird now that I think about it, considering, spirit world tends to be cold.
Sure.
But the next morning I got up, talked to my aunt, described my great aunt, Mary, who actually, and I described my exact detail, and she was like, that was my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And then she showed me a picture of her in her casket at the time. She was wearing a black dress.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and at 8 years old, you don't really have that understanding, or you probably gave it much thought as to why it happened. But
Right.
now that you're an adult and you still remember that story so vividly, what do you think the purpose was in your mind?
with her, I think, because after that, shortly after that, it was some really trying times for me. My dad wasn't in the picture.
Yeah.
He kind of just wrote me off, you know, whatever. We're good now, but
Yeah.
and then there was a lot of death that followed me after that.
So you think that, in essence, she was kind of like a sign of things to come. You're
Yeah.
going to be okay. You're going to have a tough time of it, but you'll be all right.
Yeah, and I was hanging out with a really bad crowd at about like 10 or 11. From 10 to like 15, I was with a really bad crowd.
Okay.
I didn't know it at the time that they were troublemakers, but every time they wanted to go do something, you know, where they ended up getting in trouble, something just told me, don't go.
Well, it makes perfect sense to me whenever you have that loss of a parent or someone important in your life, and you look out and seek those friendships and that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really, you kind of look past all the shortcomings.
Yeah, and
So
then
that
when,
makes perfect sense.
and then when I was 10, I was at school. My grandmother, who was like a second mother to me, she passed away in the hospital while I was at school. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, nothing like that. And that right there, because even to this day, I mean, that was 22 years ago, I still see her, you know, walking her route that she would to go home. And so I think what drives me is to find that chance with her to say, I'm going to be okay. You know, I need to say my goodbyes to you so I can move on.
And do you think part of it too is, at least for us and our experiences, that our desire to help others, because we understand it, you know, whether they're experiencing something that's paranormal or they're experiencing just a feeling, because, you know, we've touched on that in the past when we've talked about, you know, doing home investigations, of being there for people, you know, and even in the interviews that we did, you know, over the phone, a lot of the one in Vancouver especially, talked about how, you know, we just offer that support system, and we talk with people and we help them through those tough times.
We've had plenty of investigations, none that, I don't think you've ever been on one that we've actually done it, but we'll assign one team member just to sit with the client and talk to them on the front porch while we're going throughout the house doing our thing. And by the, you know,
Telling them it's a demon.
well, no, we
I'm
don't.
kidding.
No, but with, you know, that's all they want realistically as a client, I feel, is they want validation that they're not crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you go around downtown Salem saying my house is haunted, you're going to end up on Center Street.
Yeah.
You are. They're going to put you in a padded room and a straitjacket, because that's just the way people look at spirits now, except for so that's what we do, is we go in and just validate, you know, hey, you're not crazy. There is something here. I can't tell you who it is or what it is, but
There's something here.
there's something here.
Yeah. Even if we, you know, I know that, you know, we've talked in the past about some of these shows that, you know, they've been on for 10 years and they've never caught anything.
Yeah.
But the people seem to feel better.
Yeah, because it's just it's that counseling session, like what Oregon was saying. You know, you just that's what you do.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that we have done differently from most groups is when somebody calls us for an investigation, we don't stop to do the research.
Yeah.
You know, usually we just gung-ho right in, and if we actually took the time to do the research and talk to the client and do all that, we might actually be able to not even need to do an investigation.
Well, and I think too, that, you know, that not taking away from anything that anybody does, because it's one of the important things that we've talked about, is how everybody has their own way of doing things. But in my mind, studying things ahead of time kind of gives you that preconceived idea. You know, I like how William does it. William, you know, has a couple of times done readings on some of the hunts that a couple of the hunts that I've done, and he doesn't want to know any information.
Right.
He wants to go in there cold turkey, clean slate, see what he picks up, and I like that idea. I know that, you know, investigation is a big part of what we do. I mean, it's in the title of most companies that, you know, do what we do, but having that preconceived idea, reading about things, and, you know, coming to an understanding about some of the things that have happened there, you know, you've got it in your head and you're working really hard to see that.
Yeah.
You know, because we're so fascinated with what we do. You know, most people want to turn a blind eye to it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to touch it or feel it or hear it. And so with us, we enjoy what we do, and we want to understand it and explain it. That, you know, doing that research ahead of time kind of puts it in our head what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the mind is a powerful thing and can, make things happen that really aren't happening.
Well, that's like, they say that the human soul is energy.
Mm-hmm.
Going on a scientific method route real quick, you can't destroy energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Sure.
if you pass away in a house, your soul is then removed from your body, whether you go upstairs, downstairs, or you stay on this plane, whatever plane you go to, your energy is there.
Yeah.
Whether it's enough energy for me to come up and poke you or, smack you in the back of the head, that's to be determined by what I choose to do with my body or my energy.
Sure.
But also what feeds that energy, like I said earlier, is the simple fact that people can't let go.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not saying, like in your case with Eddie or
Sure.
me and my grandma, I can't let go until I say goodbye.
Sure.
That's just me.
Well, and I think that when something happens suddenly and people are ripped from us too quick, makes it even tougher to say, I'm putting it to rest. I'm saying my goodbyes. I want to move on. And, and why do we have to? As long as it's not something that is completely enveloping our lives and controlling everything that we do, what's so wrong with that?
Right.
Maybe it just offers us some strength. Maybe it just offers us an opportunity to get us through those tough times, remembering. And maybe that's all it is remembering good times, remembering the fun, the smiles, the laughs.
Yeah.
Because, I remember the bad times that we had because he was pretty sick, but those aren't what stick with me.
Right.
And so what's so wrong about holding on to those positive feelings and energies?
Right. And
is it paranormal? I don't know. Like I said, this is a tough field, but maybe it's just an emotional response and connection and helps us go through life and be better, the kind of people we are.
And with me, I've tried to go out and say goodbye at the grave.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing
not the
changes.
same.
And with me, I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't go to funerals of my family members either.
That's funny because you and I have never had this conversation before about funerals, but I have a really tough time with funerals. Because in my mind, I'm telling myself that there's been opportunities to go to funerals, and I said, and people have said, well, why don't you want to go to the funeral and say goodbye? And I said, because to me, saying goodbye is remembering those times that were so positive.
Right.
And so, affected my life so much and changed kind of who I was that, to me, that's saying goodbye. It's accepting those things that I remember about them that are always going to be there.
Right.
I'm the same way with pictures. I'm the same way, granted, I've got a lot of pictures of my kids when they were young, but to me, it's that remembering those times, and it's a part of who I am. And I believe that everybody you come in contact with, from you to friends that I've had from when I was kids, have all kind of molded me into the person that I am today.
Yeah.
And that's what I hold in and continues to drive me to, whether it's helping other people, whether it's paranormal investigations, doing this TV show. It's that positive vibe of putting something out there.
Yeah, and see, with me, the reason why I don't do funerals is because my family, and I curse them every chance I get for it, they love doing open caskets.
Yeah.
And I don't want to remember my family member in a cardboard or in a plywood box.
Well, it's that whole thing of you remember
exactly
the last thing that you saw about something.
Yeah. I don't want to see
and
them.
I agree.
And yeah, granted, I know they're not there anymore. That's their shell, but I just don't want to see that.
And that was Eddie. Right within a few days when he passed away, he lived probably the last 5-6 days. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. He was several days in the hospital, and the very last time that I saw him, he had started to where he was laying on his side and his ears started to sink in, and you could tell that he was leaving his body. And so the last day when he finally passed away, a family friend who just happened to be a therapist, one of my children, therapists that I worked with, very special lady. I was staying at her house because she had a teenage son that was a little bit older than me, that he was kind of a support system, and I was okay with not going to the hospital because mom was holding him when he passed. And she needed that closure. She needed that as mom, but me, I just needed to know that he was there. He came in our lives at a time when we needed something.
Yeah.
And there's been stories written about it, actually. My grandma wrote one. We had an article in a newspaper, a magazine, about we need special people that need. My grandma's story was something to the effect of they were deciding what to do with this soul, and that they had some people in mind that needed to help with living their lives better and moving on and a positive experience. And it has to be someone special to take care of them. And that was kind of what I held on to. Was it was an opportunity for us to grow as people.
Yeah.
You know, we both had a tough time, Mom and I, and that just kind of helped us grow as people, made us better people, and came at a time in our lives when we needed that. And he was here until he was done.
Yeah. He
We
did
had him
his
for
job.
a short time, and you know, we always kind of felt, you know, he was diagnosed at 6 months, so we knew our time was short.
Yeah. And like I said, you know, he did his job here.
Yeah.
He changed you guys. He molded you that way, and then, you know, and unfortunately, it's somebody like your brother that goes. You
Yeah.
know. But I feel he did his duty. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just it.
And that was, you know, and I've gotten that too, the whole open casket thing. You know, I was around when we were at the funeral home with my brother, but to me, I stayed.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly wanting to be back from it while my mom and, you know, different family members were grieving, and it was like, to me, that wasn't him.
No.
He was already gone. That was just not even a show, but just it was just kind of an informality thing. People needed to kind of finish that, and to me, it was already done.
Yeah.
It ended, you know,
with
days before that.
Recent family members that have passed away in the last 5 to 10 years. For me, my family does these viewings, and my mom and dad get mad at me because I won't go.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do I want to see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my grandma. Yeah, it's my uncle, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know. And my mom actually one time she looked at me. She goes, "What do you mean it's not your uncle? It's him. He's laying right there." And I'm like, "No, he's standing right here.
Yeah, he's not there.
He's right here. Look, you know, watching over my shoulder." And that was one funeral. The last funeral I went to was his, and from that day on, I will never go to another one because I was 25 when he'd passed away.
Yeah.
And I bawled like a baby because of what happened at the service.
Yeah.
He was in World War II.
Okay.
And they did, after he had died, they did the whole military.
My grandfather, same thing. Military.
Folded the flag and
all that.
everything. And I was fine for the funeral, and then it was a colonel or somebody came up, commander, somebody, I don't remember his rank, but to my oldest cousin and was like, on behalf of the United States government, the United States military, we give this flag to you.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, and I lost it at that point. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I've never been to another funeral since then, just because I'm not going to cry if they were a close enough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. If they're a close enough family member, I'm going to bawl like a baby because that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Plus, also with my special gift of being an empath, I pick up on everybody else's sorrow and.
Makes it 10 times worse.
Oh yeah, you know, and like even now, I mean, you've known when we talk on the phone, we don't say goodbye.
Yeah.
I was like, talk to you later.
Yeah.
Because me and my wife believe that you say goodbye, it's forever.
It's a finality thing too.
Yeah, like you were just saying, it's forever.
Yeah.
And I don't want that.
No.
I'm gonna live to be 900 years old. I'm gonna haunt everybody here.
Everybody that made it tough, I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna haunt you. So, you know, and I think it helps to talk about some of these things that kind of drive us because, you know, what we're doing right now is so one-dimensional.
Yep.
You see us in front of a camera, you know, and we talk about things, but having these personal moments to really talk about what drives us, you know, it kind of helps remind us why we're doing this extra time and spending that extra time away from the family. Tony, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Abnormality. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great week.